After my much needed break off of the Tomb Raider franchise, we're finally back with Tomb Raider 4. Core Design at this point have been making Tomb Raider games back to back, and they've been losing a lot of people along the way. So it's no surprise that Tomb Raider 4 was supposed to be Lara Croft's last adventure. Obviously, Lara Croft as a star in the video game industry didn't end here, as she went on to be in many games after this one. If this were to have been Lara's last adventure, did Core Design manage to end the series on a high note, or did they bury the series on bad terms? Before we go deeper with this review, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the hype button. I'm showing you what the hype button is right here. I'm grateful for Jehovah God and Jesus Christ for bringing each and every one of you to my channel, as you could be watching anyone on YouTube, but you somehow found my channel and decided to spend your time with me. I'm grateful for each and every one of you for stopping by, and I hope you guys enjoy the review. Now let's get back into it. The first Tomb Raider game released in 1996, and every year after that came a new Tomb Raider game, and even between those games were different expansions that built upon the Tomb Raider legacy. With so much work being done in such a short period of time, you can't really expect Core Design to have done much with the series with each game, but somehow they managed to do just enough for each game to feel unique. Tomb Raider 4 is what I would call the truly cinematic Tomb Raider game, the game that really elevated the series beyond just being a one-to-one platformer in a 3D era. What I mean by that is that if you look at games like, let's say, Uncharted, many people say that Uncharted was inspired by Tomb Raider, and I will agree with that, but I would say not just Tomb Raider period, but Tomb Raider 4 specifically. The first thing that jumped out to me when playing Tomb Raider 4 is how many times the camera would sweep around Lara throughout the adventure. This reminded me so much of modern day gaming, and not in a bad way. It's nothing wrong with showing off the graphics throughout a level. Another thing that stood out is this game's tutorial. Every other Tomb Raider game's tutorial was optional, where you would spend time at Lara's mansion goofing around with her and her butler. The tutorial here is technically the first 2 levels, in my opinion, maybe even 3, and this builds upon the foundation of Lara Croft and her mentor Von Croy, as these are the 2 main characters of the story. Unfortunately, Tomb Raider 4 does not break the curse of making bad tutorials. Now, let me be clear, Tomb Raider games don't have horrible tutorials by any stretch of the imagination, but they do have tutorials that seem to forget to tell you important information. There are a few new mechanics in Tomb Raider 4 that the tutorial either doesn't tell you about at all or doesn't tell you clearly. Swinging on ropes is new in this game, and it has its own physics and momentum system. The issue is that the game does not clearly explain to you how to properly jump from a rope. You're supposed to get low on the rope so that Lara can swing at maximum speed, and at the peak of the jump, let go, and then she'll go flying in whatever direction you're aiming at. Not only does the tutorial not properly teach you this, but the developers actually did not make this mechanic useful until maybe halfway through the game when you reach Alexandria. Before this, you will get on ropes and swing, but you can actually do it improperly and land where you need to go every single time, making you think, or where they're making me think, that I was doing it right, until I realized I got to this part where it was a big pit in the floor and I just kept dying because I could never reach the other rope. Another new mechanic that the tutorial doesn't explain to you at all is the new inventory system. Lara can now find 2 items that can be combined together in her inventory system, which kind of gives this game a Resident Evil type vibe. Just like swinging on ropes, this makes perfect sense for Lara Croft to be able to do. She is an adventurer and she solves many puzzles, and this is just another way to solve puzzles in a video game. The problem is, again, is that they don't explain this to you. So the first time you interact with this is in the 2nd level, and you'll be stuck wondering what item you need to get past certain doors, not realizing you have the items, you just need to combine them. Again, the game doesn't tell you that you can even do this. Or rather, I should say the remaster, which is what I'm playing, doesn't tell you, because again, they keep forgetting that back in this time period, developers relied on the game manual to explain many of its mechanics. And once again, I just see no reason why they don't add the manual from the original game in these collections when you can easily go online and find them. I'm from this era, so anytime I played a Tomb Raider game, and I've talked about this with every Tomb Raider game from the first collection to now this one, anytime I ran into a problem where I didn't understand something, I knew to go check the online manual, but someone that's new, that's not from this generation, that doesn't even know game manuals exist, wouldn't think to do that. So this is why this is important. I will keep bringing this up for each game in the collection until they just add these manuals in. My annual manual rant aside, the collecting of items and combining them together worked pretty well for Tomb Raider, and I enjoyed it. They even got a little bit creative with it as well. Near the end of the game, you can actually find 2 water jugs, a big water jug and a small one, and you have to like measure out water to balance out this scale. I wish the game experimented more with these types of concepts, and this came at the end of the game, so maybe they'll expand upon this idea in Tomb Raider Chronicles, but I have to wait and see on that one. Now, I do have a complaint with the items in this game. Throughout Tomb Raider 4, you'll find many interactable objects in the game, and you'll go up to them and there'll be a hand that tells Lara she can interact with it. And then once you do, if you have the item that you need, it will automatically highlight that item and you can go through the door, solve the puzzle, or do whatever you need to do. Jehovah God just reminded me about this toy beetle that the item interaction icon doesn't pop up. You just need to know to stand near this particular part of the floor with this emblem of a beetle to then drop the beetle down here. I thought that was weird and just inconsistent with every other thing that you interact with in the game. Then there are a select few items that you can use when you're not supposed to be able to use them. Every other item in the game, if Lara cannot use them where you're standing, she will say no, letting the player know that they're doing something wrong. But there are a couple of items that you can use anywhere you want. And there's one moment in the game where you need to do a puzzle where you need to put water, gas, and sand on these scales. When you find each of these items, you can pour them out anywhere you want. And the reason why this is so confusing is because unless you came across this puzzle before you found the items you can pour out, you're going to come across this easy to see gas station. And there's going to be a gas canister near the gas station. And you can go up to the gas station and press the use button with the gas canister, making me think I'm at a gas station. There's a gas canister and then there's a truck. And I could see where the gas would go into the truck. Am I supposed to pour gas in this truck? And Lara makes an animation like she's doing something. And I'm thinking, am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? Sometimes she would say no if I used an item there. And sometimes she would actually play an animation. So I stood here for like hours trying to pour gas in a truck that does absolutely nothing. Like all this does nothing. And if it wasn't for Jehovah God telling me to move on, I would have just been sitting here confused, because anybody would reasonably think if I have a gas canister near a gas station, near a truck with no gas in it, maybe I'm supposed to put gas in the truck, but that's not what you're supposed to do. And that's just an example of putting too many items that make sense to go together in one place. And that's something we'll come back to when I talk about one of the most frustrating levels in the game. There are other new mechanics that Lara Croft can do as well. One that I love, but the game doesn't use that often, is that now Lara can actually circle around ledges now. And this is important because this is a crucial new mechanic, but it's rarely ever used. Near the end of the game, you're going to need to do this mechanic. And because you rarely do it, you might forget it exists in Tomb Raider. Another mechanic they don't use that much is Lara climbing up and down poles. Now, this isn't really nothing special. It just makes sense for the series. Again, this game feels like they were adding mechanics that I seen Lara do in cutscenes, but you could never do in game. And I think that was enough to make this game feel different. But the key thing that makes Tomb Raider 4 stand out compared to every other Tomb Raider game is actually how they structured their levels. Every Tomb Raider game before Tomb Raider 4 felt like a massive adventure of Lara Croft exploring the entire world until she finally reached the ending of her story. Tomb Raider 4 makes the executive decision of being only in Egypt. Well, for the most part. In the very beginning of the game, you're in Cambodia, but let's just ignore that for now. Because everything is set in one location, there is a pro and con to this. If you're someone that's looking for more variety in the visual department, well, everything is just going to kind of look Egyptian. I still feel like even in this setting, there are plenty of diverse locations, but ultimately things do just look the same. The reason why this isn't bad from a gameplay perspective though, is because everything does look the same. You'll be very familiar with different textures in the world. One thing that I found annoying in Tomb Raider 2 was the introduction to climbable walls. Now, climbing up walls is perfectly fine as a mechanic, but the issue is that Tomb Raider games always wanted things to be unique. So in that game, you could find a wall that you could climb, but the texture for it may look different per level because each level was in a different setting. Because this game is so consistent, once you find the walls that you can climb up or even do a monkey climb from, you'll never get confused again. Now, later in the game, there was one time near the very end of the game, there's a wall you could climb that I didn't realize you could, but that was more to do with the fact that, again, there are mechanics in this game that Tomb Raider just stops using for hours on end, and you might just forget they exist. The pros of keeping everything in Egypt doesn't stop there. Levels are now way bigger than ever before. Now, this is a PlayStation 1 era game, so they're going to be loading screen between each section, but every other Tomb Raider game, the way it worked is once you get past a major loading screen, you would rarely, if ever, go backwards. Now, there is something good to that. That lets the player know once they hit a certain point that everything they did prior to that, it ends. Matter of fact, every other Tomb Raider game has like a level ending screen that gives you all your results. Tomb Raider 4 actually doesn't have that at all. And the reason for that is because of the new level design. In the very first major level, there are like 3 major paths you can go down. And I ended up taking the path that led me through a pool of water that I couldn't swim through. I could see there was an opening on the top of a wall that made me think there was a way that Lara could jump up there. What was happening was I was so reliant on how past Tomb Raider games worked that I thought because I had been flowing so well through this level that I was supposed to stay in this area and there was something I was missing. I was stuck here for hours, but thanks to Jehovah God reminding me that there was more to this level, I decided to explore the other parts that I didn't see. Once I went over there, it took me through a loading screen, and I thought that was very odd because it felt like I didn't finish what I was doing in the previous level. Again, I'm thinking that each loading screen is a new quote-unquote level. Instead, a loading screen just means I'm going to a different section of the bigger level that I'm in. And the cool thing is that this pool of water can be passed, but I needed a certain item from the other parts of the level that I didn't explore yet. This one change in how Tomb Raider breaks up its levels is actually the defining key feature of this game. Every Tomb Raider game before it has its own unique gimmick, but this to me is the highlight of Tomb Raider 4. By making the levels this big, they had to properly make each level make sense. In the past, a level could just end and take you to another section of the game, and although it made sense from the story perspective, they didn't have to make sure things loop back around on each other. Tomb Raider 4, when they do make you loop back to other parts of the level, they had to make everything match perfectly because if they didn't, it would make each section seem like individual levels that they tried to glue together instead of they made the entire map. And the only reason why they're loading screens is because of the technology of the time. Like I said, this makes you think differently than every other Tomb Raider game because now you know that you can no longer just rely on the fact that as long as you can progress forward, you're doing the right thing. There may be times where you find an item later in the level, not realizing that that item that you found later connects to an item that you found in the beginning, or maybe you just bypass something entirely. For example, in Alexandria, this level starts you off in a city. And as you progress through the level, you'll find like this makeshift Egyptian amusement park that actually has real deadly traps. Like this isn't a safe place for anybody. And then after that, there's actually a real ancient city that takes you underground and underwater, and it just goes on and on and on. But there was a section before this that had key items that I needed. I didn't grab the bow. I didn't grab the scope. I didn't know any of that stuff was there because I was just moving forward until I found this outside area, not realizing that there were items I needed that I just passed by. And because these levels are so big and have different branching paths, you actually get an added level of player choice because Jehovah God showed me most areas actually allow you to go a pretty far distance before you just hit a wall where you have to get some item that you might have skipped over. Other than that, if you want to progress through the left side of the map before the right, you can, or you can do the right or the left. It just depends on how the level is structured. I'm sure people who have speedrun Tomb Raider 4 know the optimal way to explore, but for a casual player, this level of freedom is going to be refreshing to you if you're used to the more linear-based Tomb Raider games. Now, the linear design isn't completely gone either. One of the best levels in the game, and a level that I believe was the inspiration behind Uncharted 2's train scene, is actually Tomb Raider 4's train level, where this is a very linear level. Well, all Lara does is hop from one part of the train to another fighting bad guys. But just think about it, for this time period to be on this moving train and fighting these guys off while still doing puzzles and platforming was actually very impressive. And I think this level still holds up to this day. Now, I will say there were moments where I was trying to jump on certain sections and I kept bumping my head, but I just had to get the angles right. But overall, I think that this is still a great example. If you want to look back and see how games became so cinematic today, you could play a game like Tomb Raider 4 and see these are the games that laid the foundation for games today. And the crazy thing is, I don't feel that this game is all that much different than a modern day Uncharted game. Sure, the modern day Uncharted game looks better because of modern day graphics, but I would actually say this still feels like a better experience than that game because that felt really on rails, while this felt like I was still in control of Lara no differently than any other level in the game, while still getting a cinematic experience. Before we get into one of the worst parts of Tomb Raider 4, I wanted to highlight some of my favorite moments of this game. A heavily unused mechanic is Lara being able to jump and catch levers in midair that's hanging high on walls and pulling them down. The first time you do this, I was like, I really hope the game uses this more often, and they rarely do, but it's such a cool mechanic. I was stuck on this puzzle where you have to light each point of a star, but the puzzle's kind of tricky because when you light one point, it could set other points off or turn other points on. So you have to know the particular pattern. And Jehovah God helped me with this puzzle because I was stuck on it all through the night. And the next morning I prayed for the answer and he gave it to me. So that was a really fun moment for me. There's another puzzle where you have to put these globes in the right slot. Now this puzzle isn't complicated at all. It's just an example of how great the graphics and art design was for this game. I would encourage you to turn on the original graphics and just see how bright and colorful everything looks. It looks great in the remake graphics, but it's something about how it looks with the original art design that just makes it stand out even more. And Jehovah God just reminded me of something that was kind of a cool moment and slightly a negative moment. There's a chess game in here, and I was just randomly playing this chess game, not realizing that there's a piece of paper you find and you can actually check the piece of paper that tells you the rules of the game. This rarely happens in Tomb Raider 4. But there are key moments where you need to check certain inventory items that tell you instructions. Once again, this is just not explained. And I don't even know if this is explained in the manual. So that's the negative part. But outside of that, I thought that was a good change of pace. And it was actually pretty fun playing this little mini game inside of Tomb Raider 4. Jehovah God also reminded me of the combat in this game. Now, to be fair, the combat isn't that different, but there are some key moments that stood out. There are enemies in this game that will actually bounce bullets off of their swords, and they'll actually chase after you. It feels like the AI overall has been improved. There are enemies that will actually chase after Lara while you're on the monkey bars too, and I thought that was really cool. And if you're quick enough, you can even shoot them down. Overall, the shooting in this game is just like it has always been. The lock-on is supposedly superior now, and there's first-person aiming. I don't feel like the lock-on is any better or worse. Maybe it's something I was doing wrong, but it just feels as good as it always have. And the first-person aiming only becomes important in certain key moments in the game, but it is cool that it is in here. There are also multiple different bullet types for each gun, and these don't really matter that much. Sure, there are certain enemies like skeletons and mummies that can't die with normal bullets, or at least they take too long and an explosive will get the job done. But for the most part, you could just use whatever bullets you have laying around, and there's no real reason to hoard them. By the end of the game, I had some of the most powerful bullets in the game because the game gives you tons of bullets all over the place. You will have an abundance of health and bullets throughout the entire game. So just go crazy and use whatever ammo you have on hand. By the end of the game, I had so many super grenades, which are basically grenades that bounce and explode into smaller grenades, that it was no reason for me to hoard them. I could have just used them throughout my playthrough. Now, I have to talk about the City of the Dead. This is where all of the great mechanics of Tomb Raider 4 weren't so great because of how they structured this level. First off, you're supposed to use your bike to solve puzzles in this game. If it wasn't for Jehovah God helping me connect some dots together, I would never figure this out. It's because Tomb Raider has always had driving in it since probably Tomb Raider 2. Maybe 1 had, I just can't remember, but I know Tomb Raider 2 and up had driving in it. And this game had a driving section in the beginning in a Jeep. But the level is structured in a way to let you know you're supposed to get in your car. This mission starts off with Lara off her bike. It's there, it's present for you to see, but she's off of it and you're getting shot at, which will make the player think, let me shoot down the enemies in front of me and just keep walking on foot. You're supposed to get on your bike so you can use your bike to solve puzzles. Once I figured this out, because I was on this like ramp and I'm like trying to jump off the ramp and reach over to a destination just by jumping. And God was like, maybe you should go back to your bike. And I did and used the bike instead to get across this gap. Figured that out thanks to him. But then we run into another problem. This level has turns that only seem as if they're disabled after you kill a guard, because every time I killed a guard, the turrets would stop shooting at me. Until you get to a rooftop where there are 2 turrets shooting at you and there's a plane, not a plane, a helicopter behind you and an explosive barrel. Shooting at the turrets does nothing. Shooting at the helicopter does nothing. Shooting at the barrel accurately does nothing. You have to rely on splash damage from your explosive arrows so that the canister blows up and then the helicopter blows up and then the turrets blow up. There is a way you can blow up the turrets a different way, but the game never explains it. And that's important because you're going to run into another section of this map where there's a turret shooting at you and it has such great accuracy. You get too close to it, it'll set you on fire. And you'll feel like you hit a brick wall because this section is small. There's really no place to go here. There's a door that you will come across that you cannot access because you need a key. And again, remember, the levels are structured at this point where you get accustomed to thinking, if I can't go forward here in this section of this bigger map, I need to go to another one. I went backwards to this section where then I fought this giant monster with a hammer that has a health bar. This is important. Every enemy that's ever had a health bar in a Tomb Raider game indicates it could die. That's what it's always been. This thing cannot die. There is a way to kill it, but it's a glitch, and that doesn't count because it's not intended. Other than that, you cannot kill this thing. So think about it. The player's consistent thought is health bar means I can kill enemy. Health bar means boss. Because I'm spending so much time trying to kill it, I'm not progressing anywhere. There's a section in this same level with this boss that you can take him to this room and lock all the doors. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm supposed to kill him this way. Maybe it's a puzzle boss. That's unique, but no. You can lock all these doors and trap him inside this castle, but eventually the doors will open, he'll escape anyway. It does nothing. Like, he's just here to be annoying. Once you realize you're supposed to run past him, open this door before he kills you, and go to this whole other section and talk to the soldier who tells you you need nitrous gas for your motorbike so you can make certain jumps, it's like, okay, this is just awkwardly made. In this same section, there's a giant dragon lizard thing that shoots fireballs at you and sends flies at you every 5 freaking seconds. And that's awkwardly this whole section just feels bad. There's another part of this level that technically this is the fault of the new graphics. That's something I didn't want to bring up too much because this game, you're going to be turning the new graphics on and off all the time just because I feel the lighting is better in the old version of the game versus the new version. But this particular level, there are actually these caskets that have these numbers on top of them. And there's a rooftop above you that shows these numbers to tell you how to solve the puzzle. With the new graphics, I'm sorry, I just didn't even recognize that was there. With the old graphics, I could easily tell that these were numbers. But once you get past all of this, you're going to hit another dead end where you're going to be looking at a pit on the ground. You're going to see across the street a red barricade with skeletons on it, which tells the player this is a death trap. They'll go over there, and there's no way to go over there anyway if you wanted to. To the left of you is a broken down car that's on fire. There's no way to reach there. And on the right of you is another broken down car that's on fire, but you can jump over there. How was I supposed to know you could jump over there? I don't know. The game doesn't tell you. You jump over there, that's where the nitrous container is. Cool, now you got the nitrous container. Guess what? You go back to your bike, you can't use it. Why? Because there's another key component you need to connect it to the bike. Cool. But remember that turn I told you about? The item you need is behind that turret that I could never get past. Let me explain to you what the issue is. The game never tells you how to properly take out turrets because every other turret, like I said, just turns itself off once you kill certain humans. And the only other time I destroy turrets is by blowing up a helicopter that was near it. What you're supposed to do is ever so slightly crawl around a turret so that it's facing the opposite direction of you. Then get out this is important. You can't use any gun. You have to use the revolver, which you do find in this level. Attach the scope to the revolver so you can use first person aiming and shoot the canister on the back. You would think using a super grenade, which is a grenade launcher that shoots one grenade that blows up into many grenades, would do the same thing, right? But no, the game is very strict with how these turrets can be destroyed for some stupid reason. You have to do it this particular way or you can't get past it. If you do not know this, you will be stuck. The only reason I even figured this out is because of Jehovah God, because I got stuck on this puzzle for at least a day and a half and I didn't want to like spoil myself. So I just prayed and I said, okay, let me just figure one thing out. Can it be destroyed? I Googled it. It says you could be destroyed, but I didn't know how to do it. And as I was messing around with it, God was telling me like, just look at the turret. And as I was like, there's a canister on the back. And I'm like, maybe that can be blown up, and it can. And that's how you get past it. But even then, when I was shooting it with my arrow and stuff, it did nothing. You have to use the revolver. And I'm like, why is this so restrictive? And why does this work this way? And why don't they explain any of this to me? That like, once you know the answer, it's smooth sailing. But I just felt like this is an example of not explaining things. And again, as a player, we rely on the consistency of the game's logic. Going back to that boss that you can't kill that pops up. It wasn't until I beat the game and just wondered, could I even beat that boss if I wanted to? And I Googled it. No, you can't beat it. Imagine if I sat there and tried to fight that boss all day and thinking I'm doing something wrong, because every other time this happens, a health bar pops up and it's a boss in front of you, could kill it. I don't know what they were thinking here, and this did not ruin my experience because after this level, the game it still had a few little areas that were a little questionable. Like after this was the area with the gas canister I told you about, but overall it picked back up to the same level of quality it was before. But I just thought this was so weirdly made, and I questioned what they were thinking during this time. Now, as far as the story goes, I feel that this is probably the best story in the series, which is saying a lot because if this happened to have been the last game in Lara's history, it would have ended off on a pretty good note. The game begins with a young Lara Croft on an adventure with her mentor, Von Croy, who seemed to have taught her practically everything she knows about exploring tombs. The only issue is that Von Croy is one of those people that don't really respect what the ancient civilizations had to say about their artifacts and wasn't too worried about booby traps and things like that. Lara's ability to respect the people that came before her is what sets her apart from her mentor. And even after becoming an adult, she holds on to these same values. The game doesn't explain to you until later that Lara actually goes on another adventure with Von Croy because as a kid, it's kind of left up in the air if he ever makes it or not. But she goes on this mission with him to Egypt to get certain artifacts, and apparently this certain artifact they were looking for releases Set, an evil false god from Egypt, and he starts possessing the land and taking things over. Even before Lara figures all this out, Von Croy already tried to like double cross her, and it had more to do with the fact that again, he didn't respect the words of the people that came before them and just wanted the item to probably sell or something. Lara's friend John actually tells her of all the plagues that's about to come, and you can actually see for the first time Lara actually feeling afraid, and not just afraid, feeling responsible for the action she took. Even though Lara didn't realize that she was participating in setting free this evil deity, the fact that she felt responsible for her actions and felt like she had to set things right actually made her more of a diverse character. In all the other games, Lara has found herself in a similar situation where she ends up activating or setting off some ancient evil that's going to destroy the world, but she always had this like too cool for school attitude about it, like, oh, okay, I did something I didn't realize I was doing, I'm just going to stop them, and like a superhero. This one, she actually felt like regret behind it. In fact, you could say Tomb Raider 4 is the game that made Lara Croft feel more like a human and not just some badass superhero. Lara actually has a friend for the first time outside of her butler, and she actually cares for him deeply. John gives you advice throughout the game, and to see Lara receive a hug from someone and seem to be receptive of it was actually kind of weird for her character because once again, she's always stayed in this box of being a generic video game superhero character. She almost, in a way, kind of reminds me of Crash Bandicoot or Spyro the Dragon. Like, you don't think of them deeper than just what they give off. Lara was actually showing human elements here, and once again, that's crazy because this supposedly was going to be the last game. Imagine someone making a game or a story about a beloved character that's been pretty much one note, but people love them so much that it doesn't really matter. And in the last game, the last book, the last whatever, was actually going to be the one that evolves the character beyond what we know them to be. And it's a good evolution. It's a more human evolution while they still retain the things we like about them, which Lara being a badass. Just imagine if this really was the end. That would have been kind of sad in a way, but also kind of cool. Overall though, the story is nothing much to talk about. Set starts to possess Von Croy and the world around you, and one thing I will say is that this is reflected in the gameplay. As you keep progressing through the story, more and more like mummies and ancient deities pop up and they're trying to kill Lara, showing that the world and all the plays are coming about, and that's expressed not only through the cutscenes but the gameplay. I really enjoyed that. But overall, Set was evil. You just end up stopping him, but Lara doesn't know if she can trust Von Croy because the last time she saw him, he was possessed by Set. But I like the ending because Von Croy, despite all his issues, felt like he couldn't leave Lara behind. Keep in mind, before he was possessed, he did try to double cross her before, but something in his heart just couldn't let him do that. And I thought, again, that's another cool human moment. Von Croy was the villain of the game, but at the end, he became less of a villain and more of a sympathetic character with his own personal flaws and issues. But at the end of the day, he probably isn't that bad of a guy. There is no other villain in a Tomb Raider game that I can think of that was this complex. It doesn't even seem like a lot because every other villain in every other Tomb Raider game was pretty much just evil guy or evil lady. But now it feels like the series was evolving into something. But again, this was supposedly the end. The game ends on a cliffhanger of Lara Croft seemingly dead, and I can't imagine what fans at the time were thinking
after experiencing this. This would have been a very tragic moment for a lot of kids and people who just love the character, because back in this time period, even now, we're not used to beloved characters just dying. And I think even some maybe older people would have thought like the series is making too much money, Lara Croft is going to come back in some form of fashion. But I just think that this was a very mature way of ending off a beloved character, because she went out saving not just the day, the entire world. And in a weird way, you could say that Von Croy is kind of like core design, or even us the player. Like for a last moment, for a brief moment, they reached their hand out to say, no, I cannot let you go. But she just had to save the world. She ended up dying because for a brief moment, she couldn't trust Von Croy. But I like the fact that she even was happy, because there was a part of her that was saying, you know what? He might be okay too. I don't know. Maybe I'm just connecting dots where they don't belong, but I just thought that whole ending was great, even though I was kind of sad. But thankfully, I'm playing the game in the year 2026, and I can clearly see that there are more Tomb Raider games. So I'm going to be able to see Lara Croft again. But in 1999, probably would have been losing my mind. So Tomb Raider 4 has to be one of, if not the best Tomb Raider games that I have played. I have to give it to them because I felt there was no way they could possibly top Tomb Raider 1. There are a lot of reasons why Tomb Raider 1 is better than this game. But if there's ever a game to be just as good, if not better than Tomb Raider 1, which to me is the best one, it would be Tomb Raider 4. Tomb Raider 4 had just a little bit of issues. Unlike 2 and 3, which had a fair amount of problems, this probably had maybe even less issues than Tomb Raider 1. So with that being said, Tomb Raider 4 was a great game. If it would have been the end to the franchise, it would have been a respectable ending, but I'm so glad that we got more adventures with Lara Croft, and I can't wait to play Tomb Raider 5, aka Tomb Raider Chronicles. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Did you enjoy Tomb Raider 4, aka The Last Revelation? Do you enjoy this game? Did you have the same hiccups that I had? Did you like the City of the Dead? I ended up liking it in the end, but I still feel like that level was not well made. But that's just probably a me problem, like always. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace out, keep gaming, God bless. Once again, please hit that hype button. I'm showing you where it is on the screen right now. I am grateful for each and every one of you for stopping by, because you can watch anybody in the world, but you decide to watch me. I hope Jehovah God and Jesus Christ blesses you all, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out, keep gaming, and God bless.